This morning, I just want to share with you a quick message, and then we will take part in communion together, which is our favorite part of the service. And so today I want us to turn to John 15. Not sure if this is working. John 15:9. Are you guys there? John 15:9. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I commanded you, so that you will love one another. These are the beautiful words of Jesus, his last teaching before he's about to go to the cross. And this is his teaching to the disciples. And our first point is to remain in his love. Verse 9, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Do you know that before the world was created, Christ was there? That Christ was at the beginning of creation, and the Father and the Holy Spirit, they were too there at the beginning. And between themselves, they have love and community within one another. They don't need us for love and community. They are not needy, or they are not needing anything of us. They have love and community within themselves. In fact, they are the definition of love. And all other things will shake, but the love of God will never shake. Amen? And so, with that same unshakable love that they have, Christ has for us. Christ loves you with an everlasting love, an eternal love, a love that's been there from the beginning. Isn't that amazing? I know you've grown up in church and maybe you've heard that, but can we just ponder about how incredible that is? And he invites us, abide in my love, remain in my love. You don't have to earn God's love today. You don't have to strive for it. His invitation to you is just remain in it. So much of our Christian life is it's not earning God's love. Rather, it's staying in his love and in his grace. Do any of you know the difference between being in the grace of God, being in his empowering presence, or doing it all on your own? I don't know about you, but I felt those two differences, and I much prefer remaining in his love. How do we remain in his love? He says this, if you keep my commandments, you will abide, or you will remain in my love. A lot of times, I feel that, the natural thing is to drift away from God's love. oftentimes. And when I feel my heart getting colder and drifting from God, I think, where am I not keeping his commandments? Where have I started to move away from being in his love to doing everything on my own? And you know, sometimes we think that it's like some great, incredible sin, and that's how we go away from God's love. But actually, it can be a subtle pride that creeps in where I say, I no longer need to rely on God's love and on him. I can do this thing on my own. I can do ministry on my own. I can do life on my own. I can do love on my own. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. You know what's so interesting? Jesus' love between the Father and him, their love was never in question. Jesus, when he was obeying and doing the Father's will, he wasn't earning the Father's love, but rather his obedience was the very thing that was sustaining and stirring up his love. Does that make sense? We're not earning God's love, but rather we're remaining in his love. And that when we are in his love, the natural thing to do is to love what he loves and hate what he hates, and to have his will be our will. Does that make sense? In what ways have you become disconnected from God's love? Are you dependent on Christ for spiritual productivity? Not even just spiritual, any productivity, or trying to manufacture it yourself? Verse 11, these things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. I think so often we feel that God is a buzzkill, that he hates fun. But Christ's commandments are not burdensome. Rather, the whole point of Jesus telling us about the Father's love and his love between the Father, and him telling us about abiding in his love, and him telling us to obey his commandments, and him telling us about all these things, about all his plans, is that we would have joy. That the point of the abiding life, the point of remaining in God's love, the point of that is that you would have joy. Not just a little bit of joy, but Christ's own joy. You see that my joy may be in you. The joy that Jesus has would be in you. When I lose my joy, I'm like, I'm getting ripped off. Who's ripping me off? I know it's not God ripping me off. It must be either the devil is lying to me, or I'm not remaining in his love. Some of you ought to get a little upset and say, where have I lost my joy? Who took it from me? Maybe it's the lie that you believe that you're alone and friendless. And here in a moment, we just read how Jesus calls you his friend. That's a reason for joy. You know, I think we think holiness is this uptightness, but I believe true holiness brings true joy. And it's so interesting that this is not just like a cool cliche that Jesus is saying. This is what Jesus is talking about before he is going to go on the cross and die the most horrific death a man could die. He's speaking of joy right before he's about to carry the weight of the world. This is the same joy that helped Jesus endure the cross. And this same joy that helped Jesus endure the cross is the same joy that Jesus wants for you to endure any of life's circumstances. Number 2, love as Christ loved. This is my commandment. So what does it mean to keep Jesus' commandments? This is his one. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. I want to just point out this, as I have loved you. Not as you love yourself, not as previous generations have given you a good example, love like them. Not just that, but the standard of our love is Christ himself. Next verse. Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. How did Jesus lay down his life for his friends? He washed their feet. He was patient with them when they didn't understand what is going on. Can you see this? He served them. He taught them. He prayed for them. He was about to lay down his life for them. Some examples of laying down our life for one another. Laying down your life for your spouse might mean prioritizing them over ministry opportunities. Laying down your life for your children might mean being present with them, not just busy, even doing good things. Laying down your life could be being present at dinner. I know I'm preaching to myself, as so many times I am at dinner with the people that I love most, and I'm on my phone. And though I'm there with them, I'm doing the easy thing to look at my phone instead of looking the person in their face. It could look like forgiving someone who hurt you and absorbing the cost of the offense. If Christ has forgiven you and he's our standard of love, how much can we forgive others? Now, this does not mean you need to burn out. Laying down your life doesn't mean burning yourself out. Even Jesus was drew to rest and to pray. Now, I say this cautiously and humbly because I'm convicted by the life of previous generations. One particular story, when I was just thinking about what story to share about love and laying down your life, I remembered this story. Well, actually, I looked it up. About two Baptist missionaries in America, and in their early 20s, they felt God calling them to go to the foreign nation. Now, this was in a time when Americans and people didn't really go to they wouldn't go to missions. That's for crazy people. That's a way to die. That's not for nobody did that. But just a few of them began to gather, a handful of couples, and they began to pray every day that God would send them and that God would strengthen them. And they just began to pray, and they then came to their board, their denomination, and they said, "Hey, we want to go as missionaries to India. Would you send us there?" And so while they said, "Okay," and right before they were going to go, these two people, Anna and Adoniram Judson, they met together and they fell in love right before they were to go on the mission trip. That's a lesson for some of you. Sometimes God, when you're serving, God puts somebody next to you to run with you. And so they go to India, and India's like, no, you can't come. So then they go to Myanmar, Burma, and Burma lets them in. And there's people there, and they don't even have a dictionary. That's how their language is. So it's not like you can even go to school and learn how to speak their language. And so the first years, they just start making a dictionary. The first 6 years, they're just spending time learning the language. And can you imagine this? 6 years later, about 6 or 7 years, he preaches his first sermon. 6 years into the mission. And finally, he makes one convert. And then it becomes 10 converts. And then what happens? The UK invades Burma. And now all of a sudden, all of the Western people seem like spies. So they take Adoniram and they put him in prison. They call it a death prison because pretty much everyone dies. And the way that you would sleep is they would put your head and your back on the floor, but your legs up in the air. And so his wife, Anna, would walk miles every day in the heat, 160 degrees sometimes, to go advocate for her husband. And sometimes she would sneak more things into the prison so that he could continue the Burmese translation of the Bible. This is such an important lesson. I want to just stop in the story and say this, that though she had a ministry, her first ministry was her family. And she didn't abandon her husband to continue preaching the gospel, but her first ministry was to advocate for him. And so anyway, they realize, the government officials finally realize that he speaks both Burmese and English, and so they need somebody to advocate for them between the United Kingdom and Burma, or Myanmar. And so they let him out of prison. And anyway, they end up translating the full Bible. And today, she ends up passing away because of an illness, sadly, at 37. But today, there's 3 to 4 million Christians in Burma. 6 to 8% of the population. They were one of the first people to launch the missionary movement from America. They didn't look at previous generations for their standard of love. They looked at Christ, who laid down his life for us. When nobody was going, they felt the Spirit moving them to go. When I hear these stories, I'm so humbled, and I tell you these stories because I can easily say the point, don't burn yourself out. But I put that on the backdrop of previous generations who literally gave their life as martyrs, who literally laid down their life, not just felt a little bit tired from too much hustle. Now, for you, God might not be calling you, most likely, or maybe he is, to go to a foreign nation and to give your life for a people, to hear the gospel. Maybe it's just loving your family. Maybe it's just serving your church. Maybe it's just covering the offenses of one another. Maybe if people walked in here, would they feel that we are laying our life down for one another, that we are loving one another with the love of Christ, that we have the same joy that filled Christ because we are being obedient to Christ? Number 3, friends of the King. You are my friends if you do what I command. And you are my friend, Jesus, if you do what I command. No, that was a joke. It's so amazing. Back in that day, kings had this inner circle called friends of the king. And that would be people who could come to the king at any time, his closest friends, and speak with him and talk with them. And here Christ does an incredible thing as he raises the status of his disciples. He is the teacher. They are the servants. And yet he calls us friends. Great men and women of God in the past, they would be delighted to be called servants of God, slaves of God. And we get even the greater privilege to be called friends of God. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. People of old have wanted to know how God is going to save. People of old have longed to look into these things, but we know God's plan for salvation, his cross, his death, and his resurrection, his return, and the resurrection of the dead, and the judgment of the living and the dead. We know God's salvation plan. We know what is in the heart of the Father for this world and for us. We know the things that have been hidden for generations have been revealed to us. Because we're the friends of God. Next slide. Oops. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. So we have this amazing dynamic. Not only are you called to intimacy with God, not only are you called to relationship with God, our privilege is friendship with him, but you're also called for a purpose, not for comfort, but for a purpose to bear fruit, to do things that matter for all eternity. I think we might skip this. Maybe we can rush through it. No. Here's our relationship with God. First, it's coming in, abiding with God, praying with him. And number 2, wow, technology does not want to play today. Let's finish. Number 1, we come into, as friends of God, we come into his presence. We have access to him in prayer. We have this great privilege of standing and having intimacy with the King. And number 2, only the order matters. Number 2, we go out in loving and witnessing to other people. So we both have the intimacy, but also the responsibility. And lastly, these things I command you so that you will love one another. Here's some closing questions. Lord, who do you want me to love this week? Am I modeling Christ's love better at church than at home? What comfort or advantage am I willing to lay down to show Christ's love? I'll just think about that for 1 second. Am I doing things? Am I bearing fruit? Am I doing good works that will remain? Or am I doing things that are gone today, here today, and gone tomorrow? Today we're going to take communion. The thing that motivates us to love. Jesus said both things. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. If you keep my commandments, you'll love me. It's both. But one of the things that makes us love God so much is his love for us. And one of the main ways that we encounter the love of God and we encounter the presence of God is in communion. That we experience God's, today, as you walk out of church, somebody asks you, hey, did you encounter God today? Did you experience his felt presence? Somebody might tell you, at your church, did they have God's presence there? I'm not sure. Are you sure your church has God's presence? But did you experience it though, or are you just saying that? I want to tell you, in communion, heaven and earth meets. And we experience the felt presence of God in communion. The real presence of God, not just symbolic, but the real presence of God. And as we remember Christ's love for us, his death, his blood spilled for us, and his body broken for us, we love one another just as Christ loved us. Amen? All right. Let's stand together. We're going to take communion.